They make a lot of headlines around the city, but really, how much do we really know about arrests that happen? Well, we've got some information on the NYPD and their arrest data for a little window of this year from January through March, and hopefully that'll help tell the story. Going in, low offense crimes, misdemeanors make up the bulk of NYPD arrests. Over 2/3 of all NYPD arrests are in fact low-level offenses. So far in 2016, misdemeanor arrests made up about 2% of what's actually happening in the city in terms of crime. The NYPD misdemeanor arrests cost the city an estimated $900,000+ per day. All of this money for these low-level crimes that we're focusing on here. What are those crimes, you ask? All right, our next slide here shows what's old is new again, essentially. In 2016, 86.5% of misdemeanors have involved people of color. Now, when we look at the year 2015, 85.6 was the number, and the previous year, 85.4. So we're hovering around that 85 to 86% number, people of color being in the clink. Theft of service, i.e. fare beating, the old turnstile jump, 91.5% of the people arrested for that offense are people of color. When we look at marijuana possession and sale, the number is maintaining right about 91.8% as well. These are startling numbers, but even more so when you take into perspective. Over 51% of the NYPD's felony arrests have been for folks of color, who make up only about 1/4 of the city's overall population. That's the whole. That's the percentage of people who are being arrested who are people of color. So interesting numbers, but now let's get into some analysis in the A block.
A new report by PROP, the Police Reform Organizing Project, claims that NYPD arrest practices are marked by racial bias and that despite the rhetoric in City Hall, marijuana infractions remain a major focus of the police. While Mayor de Blasio, NYPD Commissioner Bratton, and other city officials have made widely publicized pronouncements about reducing punitive sanctions for marijuana infractions, the data present a different story. In the first 3 months of this year, arrests for the possession or sale of small amounts of marijuana were up more than 33%. To discuss the report and what it means for communities of color, we want to welcome back PROP's director, Mr. Robert Gangi.
Pleased to be here.
Well, always a pleasure to have you here.
Okay.
You always, I would say, shed some very enlightening knowledge on us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from this report, it seems that not a lot has changed.
It's as one legal aid lawyer said to us, it's the same old crap. Basically, quota-driven broken windows policing, which is the policing tactic, law enforcement strategy embraced by Bill Bratton, the NYPD commissioner, and therefore the police department. The numbers show and experience shows, even casual observation shows, it's marked by a stark racial bias. That we put out these numbers after we got the arrest statistics for the first 3 months to show that even on the issue of marijuana, the sale and possession of small amounts of marijuana, which as you mentioned, city officials have stated we're going to be reducing the penalties for that and the law enforcement response for that, actually went up in the 3 months of 2016 compared to the first 3 months of 2015. So that the NYPD is intensifying its enforcement activity. And 92% of the people arrested are people of color. And the reason why that's important from our standpoint is we have been, to the extent we can, shouting from the rooftops, NYPD arrest practices, actually, and summons practices are racist, are blatantly immoral, target vulnerable people, not only low-income Black and Latino people, but homeless people, people who were suffering with mental illness, sex workers, street vendors, LGBT homeless youth. And the marijuana statistics are a convincing presentation of that because it is widely accepted that white people use and sell marijuana in equal or larger proportions than Black and Latino people. Yet in New York City, 92% of the rest are Black and Latino people. So the quote-unquote crime of marijuana possession, of smoking a joint on a street corner, has been virtually decriminalized in white communities. I live on the west side of Manhattan. It's a pretty diverse community, but largely a white community. And I walk my dog late at night, and it, you know, more than occasionally, I'm smelling somebody smoking, and there's no danger of their being arrested.
But they don't even feel like there is.
No. I think there's a perception and the experience of most white people that they can't smoke outside and not be bothered by the cops. But that's not the experience of low-income people of color. Another example of that on a different kind of infraction is open alcohol container. Open alcohol container, it's not considered a crime, it's a violation.
Right.
But virtually everyone that we've seen who's been either ticketed or arrested, the department actually doesn't keep statistics, is a person of color. Yeah. White people who are drinking wine or champagne in the park.
They do not know it's a crime at all.
Right. Yeah. And we're not saying that the police department should treat the white people the way they're treating black and Latino people. We're saying the opposite. We're saying that we're saying that black and Latino people should be treated the way the department treats white people.
So how much of this is people, particularly people of color, being caught between the law enforcement and the order part, where we're talking about Brooklyn's DA is like, I'm not going to bother with this. You keep bringing me these things, we're going to dismiss them. And we have a police chief who is gone on record saying that this is as dangerous as heroin, which we could argue about that. But
well, I mean, it was a patently dumb statement that Bratton made. And
but
he's capable, but it's very important to point out that Ken Thompson is one of the city officials who announced, I am not going to prosecute these cases.
Very early,
November of 2014. That is not true. We monitor the arraignment courts in Brooklyn, and his DAs are bringing to the judge people who've been arrested for marijuana possession consistently. Whenever we go into the arraignment part in Brooklyn to observe what's going on and record what's going on, we see marijuana possession cases that his office is prosecuting. Now, the DA has the ability, they call it DP, to decline to prosecute. So DAs can DP cases. His office is not DPing marijuana possession cases. So he's, in our judgment, in the group of city officials who are claiming reforms and boasting about reforms, but not changing practice on the ground.
You know, if we could just go back a moment, you know, the police commissioner, Bratton, he obviously is the architect of broken windows.
Exactly.
He also said that he wouldn't necessarily, they would change how they would prosecute possession of marijuana under 25 grams or less. Now, he's not an elected official, so if he says something but it doesn't get followed up, you know, is there a way to hold him accountable? That's not necessarily a broken campaign
the way to hold him
promise,
accountable, and it's tough because even as we and other people, there are a number of reform-minded folks working on these issues, are exposing, in effect, the hypocrisy of some of these claims and are exposing the fact that the practices are blatantly racist. The political climate hasn't sufficiently shifted, so Bill de Blasio or Melissa Mark Riverito, the Speaker of the City Council, are feeling sufficient pressure to take a strong stand against broken windows.
So do you think de Blasio has a lot of street cred with black people, though? Like, black people got de Blasio elected, if we're talking honestly. Melissa Mark Viverito is a Latino woman. Ken Thompson is a black DA of Brooklyn. Are they getting a pass just because they're giving lip service to these things, but it's the same
to a certain extent, I think that's true.
Well, if this was under Bloomberg's administration, would there be a bigger outcry?
I think that there would be. Like, as the outcry that there was, folks may remember about stop and frisk under Bloomberg and his police commissioner, Ray Kelly, and they played into the our hands of the opponents of stop and frisk, because they would say these clueless things. Remember once, and there was a Daily News headline, I saw you talking about Daily News headline, where Bloomberg actually said, we don't stop enough, no, we stop too many white people. Even though all the numbers showed that the vast majority of people that the cops are stopping were people of color. And they defended stop and frisk, literally, to use a cliche, till the bitter end, even when all the evidence was in that it was racist, that it wasn't even effective. And the political climate shifted on that issue. It has not shifted on broken windows yet. And the politicians aren't feeling the heat the way the way Bloomberg and Kelly began feeling the heat on stop and frisk. Stop and frisk, the use of it began to drop significantly under Kelly and under Bloomberg before de Blasio took office. So we think they are, to a certain extent, getting to pass. I mean, in Mark Viverito's case, she's a Latina. Thompson's case, he's a black man. He took a lot of heat on the Kai Gurley case, where he recommended probation and community service. But we think he should take heat on his day-to-day practices. His office's practices in prosecuting cases that involve 85 to 95% people of color, whether it's marijuana possession or fare evasion on the subways or something called trespass or park after dark. His office is as harsh and as severe as his predecessor.
So, Robert, where do we break this link then? Do we start with the police to break it, or does it go to a person like Ken Thompson? Where can we
our judgment are the main target is de Blasio. Because he has the authority, he hasn't used it, to tell Bratton or to tell the police department to direct them to abolish the quota system, which drives a lot of these practices, and to abandon broken windows.
The quota system.
Excuse me? They deny it. And it's either, when Bratton denies it, my response is either he's lying, because it's clear there's a quota system, or he doesn't know what's going on the ground. So either way, he's significantly deficient in his performance as a police commissioner.
So is it the best use of our energy to press the mayor, to press the commissioner for a policy that he doesn't even acknowledge, to say, stop doing it, and it's like, we're not doing it? That seems like you're chasing your tail.
The way I respond to that is, they say there's not a quota system, and Bill Clinton said, I didn't have sex with that woman, and George Bush said, we don't torture in the United States. Politicians lie or misrepresent the truth.
One thing I do want to add, a large number of those arrests, as we mentioned before, were for fare beatings. So can you just tell us a little bit about this event here?
I don't know if this could show up. This is an action that we're involved in at PROP, along with a coalition of other organizations from around the city, and we do what we call Swipe It Forward Days. We've done one in the Bronx, one in Manhattan. This past Tuesday, we did 2 in Brooklyn, including in Crown Heights, Utica Avenue subway stop, where we swipe people in. And we tell them that this is a protest against police practices and harassment on the subways. The largest category of arrests by the NYPD now are arrests for what they call theft of service, which is a fare evasion. Almost last year, over 29,000 arrests, again, 92% people of color. So what the police do is they target subway stations that serve communities of color, and as you guys may know, they're not visible. You don't have a police officer visible. They're in a room. They're hiding out in behind a pillar. Someone even thinks about jumping a turnstile, and they come out and they grab that person. And they're doing it to meet their numbers.
That quotas don't exist.
Exactly.
It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Can't wait to have you here again.
Okay.